Welcome to the Inner Fire Climbing Podcast. This is Jesse Firestone. My guest on the show is Rocco Bocchicchio. Usually I sit down and I write out a little outline for these intros, and I kind of know what I'm going to say and I know what things we talked about. But honestly, with Rocco, I did not stick to my outline at all. We just talked and went all over the place, blasted straight into space, talking about bouldering and developing and ethics and what things were like back in the day. Rocco is pretty easy to talk to, and he has a lot of old, interesting stories. He's been climbing around Joe's Valley for 27, 28 years, I think, and it really shows in the way that he thinks about his climbing, talks about his climbing. I think this interview is going to stick with me for a little while. I found it pretty inspiring, and it got me fired up to go back and do more of the things that I found the most motivating and the most interesting when I started climbing. The things that really appealed to me the most about climbing. And also hopefully not lose sight of pushing myself to keep trying hard as I get older, but still understanding and allowing that it's not going to be the same as it was. You know, I think people who are a little younger than me maybe find my stance on some of those things helpful or inspiring, and I maybe felt some of that same thing with Rocco because he's a little older than me as well. I've done quite a few of these interviews now, and I would say it's pretty rare that they stick with me. But I think this one has for the last month, and I think it will continue to. After we recorded, Rocco reached out and wanted to take another crack at one of the questions I asked him, so we did a brief follow-up, and that'll be at the end of the episode, so stay tuned for that, because I do think what he had to say was really valuable. I think this is a special one, and I hope you enjoy it. So, without further ado, Rocco Bocchicchio. Tell us where you are right now.
So I am in Joe's Valley. Technically, so we have a little commercial space in Castledale, which is the town right next to Orangeville. A lot of climbers who come through really only know Orangeville because it's the town you drive through on the way to the boulders. But Castledale and Orangeville used to be one town and split into two. So we live, it's like 15 minutes from the right and left fork in Joe's Valley, and a little bit closer to New Joe's. And it's my wife and I and the two dogs in our shuttle bus. And so we stay in the shuttle bus full time and bounce around, and sometimes if the weather's bad we'll like crash out up at the shop. But the shop space is just kind of a flex space. Like I have a board in there that we train on, and a bunch of training equipment, and then I do my woodworking in there, and she does like skincare products like salves and lotions and balms and things like that. That she makes from like the local plant life. So she goes out and collects like juniper berries and sage and infuses them into oils and then uses those to make her like skincare stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's pretty cool. Like the community here is really supportive of those things. Like, and so her business, like her salves are carried like here where I am right now, which is Cup of Joe's in the coffee shop. They have them at the food ranch. They carry them up at the hardware store. So they're like super supportive of her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
How many climbers do you think live full time in Orangeville or Castledale?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, like you can count. You know them all.
Yeah, it's like 8 people probably. I think 8.
Okay. Yeah, that's
9.
pretty. That's pretty high actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's got to be an interesting place to be spending so much time as a climber, especially a winter like this, because it seems like you guys have been climbing kind of all winter.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is like I spend the majority of the time climbing by myself, unless I have like people come into town to visit. Like I've spent more time since I've been here climbing with, obviously I go climbing with my wife, but she works a lot because she's running her business and she also works here. She manages the coffee shop as well. So she's busy a lot, and I have a more flexible schedule. And so if the weather's nice, I can most of the time drop what I'm doing and go out. So I spend a lot of time on my own.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
how long have you...
There,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm also out there like hunting for new things and stuff too. So even if I am not climbing during the summer or whatever, I'm out looking for stuff.
You go wander around. Yeah, totally. Very relatable. How long have you been climbing, just so people know?
28 years.
Nice.
Yeah, 28 years. And 26 of that has been bouldering only. I climbed, bouldering was new when I started at a little gym in New Jersey where I'm from. And there was no bouldering in the gym at that time. It was only like top ropes and like a little bit of lead climbing. And so I started top roping, and the people that mentored me were like a bunch of old school people that spent most of their weekends like up climbing in the Gunks, which is a trad only area. And I went trad climbing one time, and that's the only time I've ever climbed on a rope outside.
Wow.
It's two trad days.
Wait a second. So like you posted this really beautiful, I know I'm jumping ahead, but you posted this really beautiful tall boulder that you did last season. Like, did you do that ground up, or did you rehearse stuff on a rope?
That was the very first boulder problem that I've ever rehearsed on a rope.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. A purist.
I've done some pretty gnarly stuff, like without rehearsing it on a rope. Like I've cleaned things on a rope. Like I've wrapped down, and especially here in Joe's, right? Like back home in the Gunks, you don't have to clean as much. I mean, probably what you're used to as well in like granite areas, maybe you want to chalk things up and look at the holds, but here it's a very real thing that like something might break off up high, and that's the last thing that I want. So I just check things to make sure they're solid and like chalk holds and stuff. But I was always like really adamant about not unweighting the rope when I was cleaning things,
Cool. To kind of keep a bit of a ground up ethic.
Yeah. I think a lot of my personal ethics come from where I learned to climb, Like I spent most of my climbing in New England and in the Gunks, and it's like super, super old school, or at least when I was coming up, it was like, it was like at the forefront of bouldering development there, kind of the new wave. There was stuff done previously, like there are gill problems there, and Stannard and like Russ Clune and Lynn Hill has problems there from when she went to college there in SUNY New Paltz, like right next to the cliff basically. But then there was like a resurgence, and I was kind of a part of that new wave. There were a few people before me, obviously, like Obi Carrion and Ivan Green, who was one of my other big mentors coming up there, and Vadim Binniker, and a bunch of those guys were ahead of me. But my brother and I kind of were right on their tail, and so there was like this crossover a little bit between the old school like trad ethics and the bouldering, in that like we didn't do anything with landings. Like if you couldn't move a boulder with your hands like easily, then it was just like part of the boulder problem. And if you had to risk breaking your leg falling on that boulder, like that was just part of the experience, and you had to decide if you wanted to do it or not, Yeah,
especially with the crash pads, or the things that passed for crash pads at that time. There was not a lot of protecting, big rocks like that.
I mean, my brother and I, when we started climbing, like we couldn't afford a pad, so we had, even though there were some pads around, like cordless was starting to circulate, but like I remember going into my mom had like an old camper like broken down in the yard, one of those like slide-in ones that goes in a truck, and I went in and stole the cushions for the seats out of it and wrapped a sheet around it and like wrapped it in duct tape, and we climbed with that for like the whole first year that we were bouldering with like with a duct tape wrap cushion.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that probably felt pretty cush compared to climbing without a pad.
It was better than nothing for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually fun. It's funny to me. Like, I mean, I've always had pads because I've been climbing a little bit less time than you, but I still developed that early sense of like, okay, you're climbing this problem, you're going to cover way too much ground for the pad that you have, and you just get really good at learning like where are the areas of high risk, where are the areas of high consequence, which one do you want to protect because you can't protect both, and also how to fall without a pad, or how to like bail and jump laterally to your pad. Like all that stuff was just like part of bouldering, and I feel like a lot of the time now I show up to the crag and there's actually so many pads that people have like not even maybe developed or have forgotten to care about like how they're placed. Like they're just very like jumbled underneath the boulder. I'm like, wow, it's like an embarrassment of riches. Like there's so many crash pads that we're not even worrying about how they're put together, which is kind of nice.
I see it out here a lot, actually. Like I think spotting is a bit of a lost art, you know, and that spatial awareness as well for falling. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a completely different experience, right? Like if you have 30 pads or you have one pad, like it's a totally different experience. Like the mental part of it, like that psychological part of having to know that you can do the thing versus like hoping that you can do it, and, you know, knowing that more than likely you're safe, you know? And when you look at like, people laugh because I have like a collection of old videos. Like I took all my VHS tapes that I had and had them all digitized, and I'll like have people and I will like film the videos at the shop during peak season. If it rains or something, I'll be like, oh, everyone come by. Like I'll put the projector up and we can watch like some old films, and some of them have like Jason Kale doing problems here versus sense of problems with like one pad, and people are like, oh my god, I would never do wind below with like one pad or, you know, so it's changed the experience. But I also think like being older now, I can't imagine if I had just fallen to the pads every single time I fell off a boulder problem without anyone like slowing me down, you know, or like redirecting me a little bit and stuff like that. I think that the wear and tear on my knees and everything would probably be much worse if I didn't have someone spotting me, you know?
Yeah.
And then I come out here and I see people like falling off the tops of boulders, like all pencil leg, like straight legs, and just buckling. And I'm like, oh man, your back is going to like feel that one day. I mean, I know it doesn't now because you're 19, but geez, like, yeah.
It's hard to impress that on people. I mean, I think a lot of the time that sort of comment is, or that sort of thinking is perceived as being like, you know, you're shaking your cane at them, like get off my lawn kind of thing. Cause I've had the same thing, and it's like, to a certain extent, like I know you're also a believer in like general strength, and I'm a huge believer in strength training, cause I think it's really extended my career. Like I think I would have had to, just cause of my back really from all the falls, like I think I would have had to stop like, you know, 5 years ago or something if I hadn't really gotten into strength training and reduced the volume of my big falls, frankly. But like, every time I can get a younger climber to start strength training and to pay attention to the way that they fall and to just reduce the number of times they pull onto the boulder in the session, I feel like I'm giving them a gift like 10 years down the line that, you know, they're not going to open it until 10 years from now, but hopefully that when they do get to that point, it's going to be like a really nice thing for them to kind of discover. Cause in those early days, like I think it was still pretty cush for me, but I also climbed alone. Like you, quite a lot, and I did a lot of developing in my early years, and not always on the best stuff, and there are several falls that stick out in my mind. It's like I just broke something and missed my pad, or like broke something and, you know, cartwheeled, and it would have been nice to skip some of those falls for sure.
I think a lot of my perspective is informed by the fact that like I can go back to places like this where I can like walk up to a boulder problem that maybe I had opened 15, 16, 18 years ago or something, and look at it and be like, there is no way that I would climb that with one or two pads again. There's no way that I would do it now. And I'm like, well, you know, at 22 years old or something, it didn't seem like a big deal, but I think that now knowing like the impact that it would have on my body long term is really important, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a bigger fan of head pointing than you. It sounds like I've done quite a lot of head pointing over the years. I do not have a strong ground up ethic. I respect the people who do, but I'm too much of a weenie. And even going back to things that I head pointed and like really rehearsed and learned well, and when I stand under them, and I have, it's been long enough that I've lost that confidence and like familiarity with the problem that comes from trying it on a rope. I like stand under it now, and I'm like, whoa, I can't even like believe that I climbed this at all, even with 12 pads or whatever I had.
My perspective has shifted on a lot of things as I've gotten older, for sure, as far as the ethic go. Like I really questioned myself honestly about about roping up for that boulder. But I was kind of like, well, I'm not I'm not comfortable falling off of it, especially like being alone or just with my wife there, and having to have her deal with, me falling and getting hurt and trying to like get me help, or
Yeah.
her potentially getting hurt trying to spot me or something like that.
Yeah.
My mentality used to be one that, like, if I couldn't do it ground up, then I didn't have what it takes to do the boulder problem, and I would leave it for someone else, kind of, or I wouldn't do it, or I would, like, I always looked at things as trying to bring myself up to the level of the boulder problem instead of bringing the boulder problem down to my current comfort level. It's like I'm still like a stickler for the knee bars and like knee bar pads, like won't do it. You know what I mean? Because
I'm wearing
I'm
mine
kind
right
of
now,
like,
actually.
well, yeah, you're probably just sitting there. You sleep in them, you know?
Sorry, continue.
You ever like wake up heel hooking the edge of the bed or anything?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just
No,
thinking,
that's fine. Yeah. I can see that happening,
Yeah, it is. It is I respect the idea of like not wanting to bring it down to your level, but wanting to rise to the level. I think that is just all around. That is a very sensible way to approach it, and I feel like it's at odds with probably my single biggest like driving motivator, especially with developing, but also just with hard climbing in general, is like the creative endeavor of like learning the moves. Like I really love the feeling of trying to understand what I have to do and getting the information and like processing it. And so I think like ropes and ladders and all that stuff just feels like I'm like increasing the bandwidth of information that I can get, because I can do something ground up, but it takes so long. And if I only allot myself like 2 big falls per day or whatever now, which is kind of the way I think about it a lot of the time, some of these things I just never would have done because 2 falls a day wasn't going to cut it.
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, look, I don't have a problem, honestly, like with anyone else doing those things. And I think that sometimes in the past, like I've talked to people about my personal ethics, or they've said, hey, how come you don't use a knee bar pad there? It's easier or something like that. And I'm like, well, I just don't do that. And some people almost get like offended, like I'm being a jerk, like I'm trying to judge like their method that they're doing it. And I don't really care what anyone else does, honestly, aside from like, if you're going to destroy the whole hillside and cut a bunch of trees down to build a landing or something, like that's an impact beyond just like doing the boulder problem or not doing it. Like you're changing the experience for other people, or you're, damaging the environment. So it might like make some nice scenery ugly, and it's going to kind of detract from, someone else's experience or whatever. But as long as you're not negatively affecting someone else's experience, I don't really care what you do. Like my personal beliefs on how things are done are my own only, Yeah. Especially in Waco, right? Like people used to I'd be like, I'm not going to knee bar on that. And they're like, well, you're a jerk. And I'm like, well, why?
Waco's going to be really hard without knee bars.
I've only used one there ever.
Oh, okay. Well, I have to know which one.
Oh, the start of the egg.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it without it, but it was horrible. It was, like, did not improve the quality of the boulder problem at all.
Is it the knee bars or the knee bar pads that you don't like?
I don't really like. I personally don't like either.
Okay.
I don't know. I think my enjoyment of movement is like tension and connection with the rock, for one, and I also. I put this expectation on myself that there needs to be some sort of effort or sacrifice to achieve the thing, to like, I'm almost out of like respect for the boulder problem or something. I don't know if that sounds silly or what, but like, to me, I want to like feel connected and flowing and strong enough and in control. And if that means that I have to go train something for like a year in order to rise to the demands of that boulder problem, to do it in the style that I personally want to do it in, to have the experience that I'm looking for, then that's a more enjoyable experience to me than like taking an easier way you know, and not having the climbing experience that I'm looking for, you know.
For
Like
sure.
in Waco, like I find a lot, especially with the knee bar pads and stuff, there's like a lot of fiddling around that happens, and like plugging them in and taking them out and all of this stuff like takes time, and it almost for me feels like it makes the movement, the flow of the movement, like a little disjointed. You know,
It makes it very chunky and very like stuttery. Yeah, I totally know. It's
yeah,
like
it
the
breaks
rock.
it into sections. Yeah.
It's a different like it's like a different style of dancing or something. You know, it's like you're doing this like rock crawling thing instead of like really climbing. It has a different feeling for sure. I get that. And it's in what is it, non gustibus et disputandum. In matters of style there can be no disputes or something like that. Like it's just different for every person, which I think is one of the cool things about it. Yeah, fair
I'm
enough.
really looking for a feeling, you know, in the movement.
Yeah.
Like I want to, and that's why I repeat things a lot too. You know, like I historically haven't been happy just doing a boulder problem one time. I like to go back and do things a couple times if I can, just because I want to really feel what like the rock has to offer. I want to experience that like refined movement if I can.
Yeah, feeling mastery too.
Yeah. And that often means taking something that might be really, really hard for me today and getting stronger and coming back and experiencing it in a better way as well.
Yeah.
You know?
I think the repetition in general is just super underrated, I think, among climbers. And that speaks to the same thing as like the ethical standard, I think, which is the more time someone has with a given crag or a given project or whatever, the more they can afford to have really strong ethics, so they can afford to like focus on these elements of performance like repetition. Not that you couldn't choose to do those things if you were really time constrained. People totally could. But I think more often what happens is like if you have a weekend trip to a place, you're going to employ all the tactics, and if you brush the pad or whatever, it's a lot it's a lot harder to forgive yourself for those things when you have the time to go back and like do them really well, you know? And I think that's always for me been like one of the hugest advantages of like making climbing a priority and living somewhere that I can like do a lot of climbing, is I can engage with things in the way that I really want to. And I feel like when I coach people who get like, they live in New York and they get like 1 week a year to go somewhere, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, well, you should employ every cheat code that we can gain access to, basically, as long as it doesn't mess with the rock or mess with other people's experience. You kind of want to get as much as you can. Do you feel like you find that same thing? Like it's easier for you to hew closer to your ethical standards for yourself because you have a lot of time to climb?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate the privilege and the circumstances that I have, and it comes down to a lot of choices. Like I have a lot of friends that I started climbing with that still climb, and even like as far as ability goes, they're like, oh man, I want to be able to climb as hard as you still climb. And it's like, well, at a certain point in my life I had to decide that like I was going to live in a shuttle bus instead of a house, and like I wasn't going to have kids, and like things like that. And those life choices, whether they're directly intended to change your climbing experience or not, like just have the result that they have, in your life as a whole, and so yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that I don't have a lot of the constraints that other people have because I've chosen to live my life the way that I do,
Yeah.
And I think that I have a ton of respect for, and I've had to explain this to quite a few people, I have a lot of respect for the people that can even get out and like are trying and training and stuff when they have like a demanding career and like 4 kids at home and, a mortgage, and they've got all these things going on. Like, I feel like if that person can come out and do, a V6 boulder on the weekend that they really want to do, like I have more respect for that than me climbing something at my limit, honestly, because I don't have the same constraints, I mean, I'm still human, right? Like I still have a lot of stress and everything that impacts it, but it's not the same,
Yeah. I mean, we're not all running the same race for sure. And we're starting at different points and going different distances and all that stuff. I feel that. And I'm the same as you.
to a point, I've made almost as many sacrifices as I feel like I really could have made, especially like in my 20s. Like my 20s were just pure climbing, like hedonism. Like I was just experiencing the climbing and living in a van and putting all my work and family and all that stuff to the side. And I did a bit less of that in my 30s, and I feel like I'm kind of settling into my 40s being like climbing is maybe not even the most important thing in my life anymore. Oh gosh, see if I really follow through on that promise. But yeah, it is a big change, and it makes me. I mean, I have a 4-month-old baby at home now, and it really makes me like I have to walk the walk that I try to talk with clients who have kids and stuff and really like see what it's like firsthand to try to like prioritize something that's so important to me when I have other things that are just, evolution dictates this is the most important thing in my life every time I look at it, there's no getting around it.
And I think it's really, really important, especially as we get older too, right? For everybody to give themselves a bit of grace for where they're at in life and in climbing, and also not go so far in giving themselves grace that they give themselves an excuse not to try any longer, So it's like a fine line to skirt, I mean, I think I experienced that of just being older, right? Yep. Like in my mid 40s now, like I'm not 20 anymore. My body's not exactly the same as it was. And I have to accept where I'm at, but at the same time, like sometimes I'll say, oh, maybe I'll just cruise today and take it easy. And it's like, no, you got to push still some while giving yourself grace.
Yeah,
it's
a hard
really
thing to do.
Difficult thing to balance for sure. Yeah.
I find myself, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. I find myself like kind of, if I have a day where I want to try hard and I kind of can't and I pull back, I find myself like patting myself on the back for being like, you were smart today. You held yourself back a little bit. And then other days when I feel really tired, but the conditions are good or whatever, and I go out and climb and I dig really deep, which is not that deep with a 4-month-old baby, but it feels really deep. And then I'm patting myself on the back for trying really hard, and it's both of those things are, I think, needed in equal measure. Like I often talk with clients that I work with about like the concept of finding the gear shift as mostly as a metaphor for like the way you actually climb. Like, can you actually downshift and chill out, and can you actually like shift up and like go into high gear and really try hard? And I think the same thing is like important in your life too, to just, I think as we get older, we naturally start to just go down into second gear, third gear, or even idling, and kind of just do the things that feel comfortable and go back to the same projects and kind of give it, 70% effort or whatever. It gets harder for sure to find those higher gears.
I don't know if you find this as a coach as well, but if it's like the one thing I wish that I could give people was self-awareness, because like when it comes down to it, so much of this, like being able to succeed in climbing, especially as you get older, I find is knowing when to pull back and when to push. And there's no like easy answer, every single session is different for every individual. And you can't just like, everybody's looking for like a silver bullet or like a guideline or a manual to like how it's done. And it varies so much from person to person. I find that like, that without that self-awareness, it's really, really hard to succeed, because you could pull back at the wrong time, you could push at the wrong time, and,
It's, there's, I think people really want there to be, like you kind of mentioned, there to be like a system or like a clear solution, but there's really not. And what people can tolerate is confluence of like so many variables: their age, their training history, their climbing and training age, and like their life circumstances and their family life and their job life, and like so many things. It's not as simple as like, oh, you can climb 3 days a week and strength train 2 days a week. And I think that's actually a really tricky thing about coaching in the relationship is if I only get 8 or 12 weeks to like make an impact on somebody, and we have to spend the first 4 or 6 weeks finding out if the volume is even tolerable for them, or maybe it's not enough for them. It makes it hard to really like get in the groove and make really good progress. It's volume management in climbing, I think, is really complicated. I think it's much trickier than other sports. I haven't coached other sports very much, but I get the sense that it's tough for us, man. How many other sports are there where it's like when you go out to actually do the thing, you might be out there for 6 hours going to the death, and you did not think that you were going to be doing that until you were out there doing it. It's just, and we do that over and over every weekend.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've noticed the most, like, well, besides recovery, being a little bit older, is that, like, when I was younger, man, I used to climb a lot, like way too much. Like, if I could go back and tell my younger self to rest more, like, yeah. I drove out here from New Jersey, and my brother and I drove to Joe's and climbed for 30 days without taking a rest. We climbed for 30 days. The first year that I climbed, we were in the gym for over 350 days.
Wow.
I took whatever, the only days that we took off climbing were the days that the gym was closed, like for a holiday or something. Wow. Then a couple years later, I got a key, and then that was all out the window too, and just like nonstop.
I have similar, like, I think it must have been the second summer after I got into climbing. I have like a clear memory of, I was in college and it was summer. I wasn't in classes or anything, and we'd go to the climbing gym, to get there when they opened at 10 a.m. or whatever, and we'd climb for a few hours, and then we'd go home and like eat some food and lay around, and then we'd go play beach volleyball while the sun went down, and then we'd like walk to the pizza place and get a pizza, and we just did that every single day. Maybe taking a rest day because we got drunk or something like that, but that was about it. And I have this, every time I think about this, I'm just like, if I didn't even do the climbing and volleyball part and I just ate a whole pizza every day, I think I'd feel pretty bad. I don't even need to do the activity.
I spent most of my life, except for when I was on the road, like working construction jobs, and I would go and run a jackhammer for 10 hours and then go right to the climbing gym.
Wow.
And climb for 5 hours. And then like go get up at 4 a.m. again and like go back and run a jackhammer again, like crazy.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think though that realistically, for whatever wear and tear all those years of blue collar work had on my body, I think I was really lucky because the resilience that I have, like, if anybody's listening, that 360 days of climbing a year, like, don't do that. Results may vary, you know what I mean? But like, I think that my body, besides genetics, right, which plays a big part, I think my body was super resilient, and I kind of got in on the, like, maybe the earliest of strength training for climbing just by accident, because I was doing all of this manual labor. And I think it just made my body like super robust and resilient. And I haven't, thankfully, been like very injury prone or anything, so
that's awesome.
Everything seems to be holding together pretty well. And I guess carrying, 200-pound bags of cement upstairs all day and stuff like, had a positive effect.
Yeah. I think like there's a lot of like people poo-poo on like the junk volume and stuff. But if you, first of all, when you're 19 or 22 or whatever, junk volume just doesn't exist because you're 19 or 22. It just has nothing to do. It's not about volume management or load management about that point. It's just about how fun the thing is and the fact that you're a kid and like you're going to do the fun thing. It's the same as an adult now. I kind of know that if I like played video games for a couple hours or something, there starts to be an opportunity cost. And even that is enough of a negative externality. But like it as a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old or whatever, just play video games all day. Like, it's fun. Why not do it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that same effect going on, separate from all the physiology stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the physiology stuff definitely changes over time. But I don't regret having spent so much time climbing, even if I am a little bit beat up now because of it, because I feel like it got me to a place I'm really happy with. And when I look at the other people in my family who are like less active in their 20s and 30s, I think to a certain extent I'm more injured than them, or I have like more, my hands maybe will be a little worse when I'm in my 60s or whatever, but I'm also way stronger than them. And so I think it's like kind of it's a balance, or like a give and take for sure. What are as somebody in their mid 40s, what are the signals to you of like, this might be a good day or this might be a bad day? Like, how do you kind of make that decision?
I think a lot of it just kind of starts in the warm up. I have the benefit of having been having done this for so long that I can tell right away almost. Like once I start hanging on my fingers or pulling on things, like I can walk up to my board and just start grabbing holds, like with my feet on the ground and like curling my fingers into things and being like, okay, cool, like I'm feeling pretty good today. Like maybe just do some pulls from the ground and I don't even have to leave the ground most of the time. But if I'm out there climbing somewhere, generally I'll have like a couple test problems. I always try to find something that's near one of my projects, and I'll just do that problem a lot. And, by doing that problem or those couple problems and kind of noting how I feel and then going and having the session on the project, I can kind of document whether I felt good that day or bad that day, and then I just use my feeling on those kind of test problems as a reference. It goes back to that repeating thing that we were talking about earlier a little bit. I think that, and I've this has been a really big thing as I've been guiding in Waco over the years, is that because you're in direct contact with so many people, it's always been amazing to me how many people will be, wanting to try like a V13 boulder or something, and literally right next to it is a mega classic like V5 or 6. And I'm like, hey, you should run up that thing while we're here, because in Waco, you're not always going to get back to it, right? Like, you should do it. It's amazing. It's like a 5-star line, like one of the best in the world. Like, you need to do it. And they're like, oh, no, I'm saving my energy. And in my mind, I'm like, if you can't, flash a V5 or V6 as part of your warm-up, then maybe you don't have any business trying a V13 boulder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't take that much energy from you that you can't perform on the project. And I kind of take that mentality out here. Like, if I'm working on something that's like V11 or 12, like, and there's a V9 next to it, I'll make that V9 part of my warm-up. And if I can't do that problem, then it's probably not going to be a great session on the project, on the harder thing,
I've often done a kind of similar thing. I find in really major areas, like I've definitely done this in Joe's, I like to go do a new moderate before I go to the project, which maybe is a little more risky in the sense that I don't know the moves and stuff, but I love the confidence boost that I get from just doing a new boulder before I go to the thing. And a lot of the time, if I was trying a V11 or a V12 and there was like a V8 or a V9 right next to it, I often won't do it on purpose, because I like kind of saving it for like a victory lap, if that makes sense. Especially if it's like really cool looking. Like one thing that I've done this with is I never tried Midnight in Index, which is like a very famous V9 in Index, because I always had it in my mind that when I finally did Hagakure, this V12 that I did not that long ago, that then I would go do Midnight as like I did it, like victory. You get to do a really cool thing. I actually just ran out of time that day, so I didn't get to, but now it's in my mind. It's like I've unlocked this other thing that I wanted to do. But I love the idea of like repeating things just to see, where you're at and how you feel that day. I think I use that more seasonally, but it's a good idea to do it kind of on the day for sure. And then you get to the top of the boulder, which is really nice when you're projecting.
Plus, I mean, that's like, I don't know if this happens to you, but if I project too much and I just get used to failing all the time, my chances of success decline significantly. And sometimes I'll need to be like, I'm going to step away from this thing for like a week or two. Again, a privilege of being near the boulders for sure, right? But I'll be like, I'm going to step away even for a day. If you're on a 1-week trip, be like, tomorrow I'm just going to go do a bunch of stuff and get in the habit of climbing from the start to the finish of boulders. And I'm going to stand on the top of every one, and then I'm going to try and carry that momentum into the harder thing,
Yeah. I call that the habit ascending.
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment, though. Like, unlike you, I don't step down once I do the hard thing. Like, if I send the proj, I'm like, oh, I got another proj. I'm feeling good today. Let's go, like, push our luck,
Straight
I'll
to
just
the
try
next
and
one.
do them all in one day,
Yeah, to the point of the Waco tanks, kind of, I think it's a straw man, but I don't know, maybe it's a real person who's like trying a V13 but doesn't want to do the 5 or 6. I think failing on a project can be a comfort zone for people, because like they would rather be seen as the person who fails to do a V13 than the person who fails to do a V11 or fails to do a V8 or, for heaven forbid, fails to do a V5 or 6, right? It's like much more comfortable to fail on the super, super hard thing. And I think as I feel like I've kind of leveled out closer to my genetic potential, it's been hard for me to make sure that I'm not slipping into that, like, just turbo projecting 13s, because it's comfortable to do that, and make sure that I go out and honestly get my ass kicked pretty often on like V10s and V11s, and remember, like, yeah, these are also still quite hard and things that take a lot of effort, even though it's maybe not as good feeling on my ego to fail on them as it is to fail on, you know, a V13 or something like that.
I mean, I'll make a really broad statement and say that most of the time when your ego gets involved in that type of decision making, all you're doing is stunting your own growth, you know? Because I find that the growth happens by going and doing and trying those things that are easier, you know, and getting comfortable with them. Instead of just projecting all the time. Yeah, I do agree. I think you're right. Like, people would rather post a photo on Instagram of themselves working, you know, Return of the Sleepwalker or something, and say, hey, worked on this weekend or whatever, with no context, instead of being like, hey, I'm projecting V4 or some shit, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hopefully not the same person.
Well, yeah, I hope not, right? Yeah.
There's some really hard V4s out there, though, maybe in font or something.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have a font for sure.
I have a clear memory that sprang to mind while you were talking about this, which is I was at the Sassy's in Rocklands. It's just like a major zone in Rocklands that has just some incredible boulders. And watching this Japanese kid, I actually don't know who he was, although I'm sure he's someone that I would probably recognize his name now, because I was just standing there trying pinotage, and I watched this guy. Like, this boulder is just stacked on all sides, and from the stance of that boulder, you can also see several other classic, like, hard boulders. And I just watched him, like, walk down the line, you know, doing, like, the roof V8 on the back of the boulder, and then doing Springbok, which is like a highball dyno that he did with no pad, and then doing Splash of Red, and then doing pinotage, and then walking over and doing Shoshaluza, and he climbed everything. I think Shoshaluza took him like 2 tries, but like everything else he did like first try. And it was just him and his coach with like 1 pad. And I remember just thinking, like, this, I don't even know if he knows what these boulders are called or like what grade they are. He's just doing all the lines, you know? And
yeah, they're all called warm up.
Yeah. And Rocklands will just do that to you. Rocklands will make you think that yeah, the level is so high there, and even that was, you know, 8 years ago or something like that, but the level is just so high.
You might not recognize his name. He might just be any random Japanese climber.
Yeah.
It sounds about par for the course, you know?
Yeah, totally. But it's
strong over there.
That, like, habit of sending thing, that's one of the most, like, clear examples of it that I remember seeing in my climbing life, of someone who is just like, I can do this, everything they walk up to. And he didn't really seem too perturbed about, like, the style of climbing or the difficulty or anything. It was really, really impressive.
I think that what you just said is like one of the keys to that last, like, squeezing that last 1% out of your climbing or something, is having the ability to spend enough time climbing on rock, getting comfortable doing a bunch of boulder problems like that, to have that level of confidence. It's like a skill, you know, for applying the strength that you have. And people who don't get, like, these big open-ended time frames, I don't think they realize, like, how impactful that actually is on your climbing. You know, like, spending an entire season in Waco is like a completely different experience than even spending a month in Waco. It's just not the same. You know, the ability to climb problems enough times at a high enough level that you know that you can walk up to something, anything, within 2 grades of your limit and do it in 3 tries or less, you know, and knowing that, you know, where your true flash level is, like bringing your flash level way up, because you get so used to climbing on rock and the process, and your warm-up is dialed and everything is right, and it almost becomes like getting really good at your job. You know what I mean? Where you can almost go on autopilot and more or less walk up to, at a certain point, like, you can walk up to anything that's, say, like V9, and know that you're going to flash everything V9 and under for the most part, right? But you don't get that if you don't get to do it, like, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Waco is is such a perfect example because there's probably a very short list of climbers who couldn't spend a season in Waco and walk away from it being like a much better climber than they were going into it. And like intermediate and advanced climbers, that's probably especially true because it's just so physical and savage. And like there's not that many places where I feel like you really don't need to add strength training to the mix in order to stay strong. But like Waco tanks, I really feel like you can just climb at Waco, even climbing at Waco like 2 times a week, 3 times a week for sure, but even like 2 times a week, I think a lot of people would get stronger physically climbing there because it's just so intense and steep.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like weightlifting.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And I mean, so I had been there twice. I had done 2 one-week trips there, and coming off of the second one-week trip, it was just a mess for a variety of reasons for me. But my at the time girlfriend like smashed it there, and I was like, okay, she loves it here. I wanted a chance to like really prove myself, and I knew the next time I went back it would be for like a long trip, and I went back for almost 2 months, and it was just totally different. You get to know the area. You get used to the beat down. My skin adapted. It's very, very dry there, so I struggle with that a little bit. But it's a different experience spending that much time somewhere. Like 45 minutes ago, I wanted to ask you how did you wind up getting west from New Jersey? Like, was somebody just like, hey man, I hear there's good climbing in Utah, or what happened?
Well, my original climbing partner, like my friend, his name's Mike Imperial. He lives in Salt Lake still. I met him at the gym, and we started like climbing up in the gunks together and everything. He went out with me the first time I ever went bouldering outside. Like the original climbing buddy, besides my brother. And his family moved out to Salt Lake my junior year of high school. And so in my senior year, I flew out to visit. And that was, went climbing in Little Cottonwood. That was the first time that I came to Joe's. And we just happened to, he worked at Recreation, which was the climbing gym on the Black Diamond campus. They're closed now, but we were there and we met somebody, and he's like, oh, there's these new sandstone boulders down in central Utah. And we actually rode down here in the bed of a pickup truck because they didn't have room for us in the truck, like laying in the bed of the pickup truck for 2.5 hours to Joe's. And climbed here, and then went home, and I graduated high school, immediately put my 2 weeks notice into my retail job and jumped in my van, and I like drove right back here.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I wound up just traveling a whole bunch, and I got lucky and climbed with the right people, and I guess had the right attitude, and got some sponsorships which really helped like support me being on the road and climbing and stuff. I guess a little more, as full-time as you could for the most part, maybe as a B team, athlete or something, right? I still did like a bunch of construction projects here or there, and I would go home for the summer and work, and then travel, for like 5 or 6 months.
Gotcha.
But
when did you?
It was easier to do then. It was so much easier to do because it was cheaper. I don't know if you could do it the same way anymore,
Yeah.
Like I used to live for 6 months on like $1,400.
Yeah.
So
well, the whole dirt bagging thing has like really changed a lot in general. I mean, yeah, I don't want to do the get off my lawn thing again, but it is way different. Like rolling into the buttermilks is just like way different than it used to be. Like the average car in the buttermilks the first time I went there was like a beat up like 98 Subaru or something, and now the average car is like a $160,000 van.
It's funny that you notice that too. I gauge things on the cars. Like I'll drive by the food ranch on like a peak weather day, and it's packed, and I'm like, all those cars are new. Like, what the hell, That's something I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but that's one of my deep-seated disappointments with the evolution of the climbing community, in that it's become so much more gated. Like I feel like if I can say this, I've built my entire life around climbing, and a large part of it wasn't just climbing. It was the fact that it was one of the only places in my whole life where I felt welcomed and like I belonged as a young person, you know, like I never fit in at all anywhere. And as soon as I walked into the climbing gym and started climbing, like the barriers of age didn't exist anymore. I climbed with people that were 70 years old and with people that were 12 years old, you know, race, gender, all that stuff went out the window. And we all just kind of had this one thing in common, that we felt like we belonged to the climbing community. And it was this amazing feeling. And it's sad to know that if I were 16, 17 years old when I started again right now, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't even be talking to you right now in the same way, because the barrier to entry is so much higher, you know?
Yeah.
Like my first pair of shoes was $60, and I had to like pick cans to save up half the money. And my dad was like, I'll pay for half of a pair of climbing shoes if you can get the other half. And I saved up $30 by like changing cans in and stuff. You know what I mean? Like the gym membership at the gym was $28 a month, and my brother and I couldn't afford it. So I got a job belaying birthday parties at the gym so that I could climb, you know? And I feel like those opportunities don't exist very much anymore. You know, gym memberships are out of reach. You know, travel is out of reach. Gear is out of reach. And I feel like there's a lot more money in climbing than there used to be, just by nature of there being more users. But it doesn't really seem like anybody's doing anything to extend the olive branch to all those kids out there that could really benefit from becoming a part of climbing, that don't have the opportunity to, because they don't have the means, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is. We don't really like to talk about that much, I think, but it is kind of a sport of privilege. Like it's a little bit of like a middle upper class kind of sport for the most part. And I think I've been fortunate to like know and meet a lot of people who are sort of like modern dirtbags, or like, you know, and I use that as a term of endearment, not like in the classic sort of definition of dirtbag. So I think those people are still out there, but you're right. It's like the feeling of walking into the scrappy rock gym in 2003 or whatever, and the feeling of walking into one of these brand new like mega gyms is a very different feeling. And yeah, I think, you know, you said there's $28 for a month membership, and that's a day pass at a lot of gyms now. Which even to me, I feel like I'm reasonably well off. I'm lucky enough to be doing pretty well with my coaching and stuff, or at least making ends meet. And like a $28 day pass is like, okay, I feel like I gotta really enjoy that and make it super high value, because it's a lot.
My brother and I got a sponsorship, because our first sponsorships, because we did a first ascent in the Gunks. And so we did this boulder problem, and we went to Ivan Green, who was like the guy, you know, for bouldering in the Gunks. And we were like, hey, has this been done? And he was like, no, that hasn't been done. He's like, you guys didn't do that thing, did you? And we were like, yeah, we did it. And so he's like, well, show me. And so we went out there with him and Al Diamond. And actually, Joe Kinder showed up and met us out there too that day. So again, a privilege of the community being small, having access to all of those people, you know? It was like you were just surrounded by legendary people, like all the time, that had all of this knowledge and drive and whatever. And so we roll up to the boulder, and it was pretty tall, over like a talus landing. And we literally had our cushions with the sheet and duct tape on them. And we each had like 2 toes sticking out of the fronts of our shoes because they were destroyed. So when you stepped on something, you had to like tuck your toes back in and step on them. And they were like, yeah, whatever. So my brother climbs the boulder, and I climb the boulder, and then Ivan ended up climbing the boulder, and he's like, dude, this is like V10 or 11. He's like, where did you guys come from? You know, and we're like, oh, we're from some shitty little gym in New Jersey. I shouldn't say shitty. It's a wonderful gym. I still love it. But this little gym in New Jersey that you've never heard of. And they were like, dude, we got to get you guys like shoes and a proper crash pad at least, you know. And that's like how it all started. You just like climb around cool people and, you know, And that sort of connection and opportunity, I think, again, doesn't exist anymore. You know, now people have like resumes and things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, again, like if I started now, I don't know that I would have I would have been able to go this far. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's the counterfactual, like we'll never know what would have been, but it is interesting how much things have changed for sure. And I do think like one thing that makes me feel better is it feels good to me to see how many people get to enjoy it. And yeah, I have like reservations about the demographic maybe that climbing mostly is catered towards, but the modern gyms with all the bells and whistles and like big volumes and stuff are very, very expensive. Like I don't know if there are still some scrappy gyms around for sure, but I don't know how well they would compete in an environment with one of those modern gyms, even if their prices could be a little bit lower. But all that to say, when I walk into those really big gyms, the cool thing to me is there can be hundreds of people in them, and it's cool to see like so many people enjoying it. I'm looking for a silver lining.
I mean, I'm a believer in not bringing a problem to the table without bringing solutions to the table.
Oh, okay.
You know?
You got solutions.
Well, I do have. I always have solutions. You know, I wouldn't complain about something unless I had ideas. You know,
Nice.
But I really think there's plenty of opportunity to do more outreach. You know, like especially these major gym chains. Like I don't quite understand why they don't just have a nonprofit wing. You know what I mean? It's going to benefit them, you know, at tax time and everything. And then they get to have like a separate wing for community support. Like, I mean, doesn't Nike has like I mean, they're not Nike, right? Like they don't have Nike money for sure. I'm not directly comparing them, but like if you go to one of these really, really big chains, like they could pretty easily have a staff of 1 or 2 people running a small nonprofit wing that makes sure that the people in the surrounding community have access, you know?
Yeah.
I'll pitch one idea on your podcast that I love that I've been telling gyms about for years that I haven't had anyone take on yet, but hey, if anyone hears it and they want to do it. Have you ever heard about like, it's like a buy a slice, give a slice sort of thing in New York City, right? Like you can go into a lot of these pizza establishments, and the way that they used to do it is you could pay for a slice in advance and they'd write it like on one of those white paper plates and just stick it on the wall behind there. And if someone came in and they like forgot their wallet or they were homeless and hungry or whatever, they'd pull that slice off the wall. So it's like of no cost to the small business or whatever. It would be awesome to do that with day passes, right?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Allow you to just buy a day pass. Even if it was at a reduced rate would be even nicer, right? If the gym was willing to eat like 25 or 50% of the cost of that donated day pass. So you could pay for like 1.5 day passes and then have one in the computer system for somebody that needs it, right? Or to bring like a school group in from like a Title I school or something. Or you could even just add it on a membership, right? Be like, do you want to throw 1 day pass a month on your auto pay for your membership, and it'll be there for somebody that needs it. You know?
Yeah. So I've like waffled on whether I would talk about this on the pod, but a few years ago, my buddy Kevin Curran, who was like my original like day one climbing partner, like we literally went to the climbing gym together on the first day. So he was a good friend of mine, like before I started climbing. He passed away a few years ago, and he was living in Southern California, and like some of these people might even listen to this, but he had a number of friends who were people who, you know, didn't have a lot of means in life, but they were into climbing. And he was really interested in taking those people out to crags that he was developing and getting them into developing and getting them really into like doing first ascents and stuff, because it's free. You know, it's quote free. Yeah. If you have money to throw at it, it turns out it's really expensive. But it was a way of engaging with the sport that those people could do. And some of these people were coming from backgrounds, you know, where if they weren't doing that, they would maybe be doing things with their time that were like deeply unproductive or outright damaging. And it was really powerful to me when I went down for his service to see the number of people whose lives he had touched by doing that. And that's just an example, you know, setting gyms aside, that's an example of how somebody who just a person could make that big of an impact in the climbing community. Because we do still have Yeah, the scrappy rock gyms are maybe phasing out of the world, but there are crags everywhere, and the shoes are not free and stuff, but we can still participate in climbing. So yeah, maybe I'm giving myself a little bit of a kick in the ass to try to do more of that. I'll think about that.
A lot of people have helped me get to where I am, and enabled me to climb. The number of good mentors that I've had throughout my climbing career is just, it's astounding. And I almost feel like I owe it to all of them. It's part of the reason that I still participate, honestly, because sometimes I don't really feel like it anymore. Sometimes I do get really negative and down about the state of the community, and I kind of ask myself whether climbing is even important or worth doing with the way that the world is, and I think that the thing that draws me back to it is I see the impact it had on me, and I also see the impact that it's had on a bunch of the people that I've brought into climbing and helped and given first ascents to and driven to the crag and given my old shoes and whatever. I've tried to pay it forward as much as I possibly could in the same way, as a, almost as a tribute to all of those mentors that I'm so appreciative to have had. And I feel like it would be cool if we just had more of that. I think, people talk all the time about the system of mentorship, breaking down a little bit, right? Because again, there's probably 5,000 people climbing now for every one of me that exists. And so it's really hard to pick a single person out of that even, It's quite difficult to have access to those people. And people talk all the time about how that breakdown in mentorship is affecting ethics. People don't know how to spot. They don't know that they shouldn't use hard brushes on sandstone. They don't know that they shouldn't climb on wet rock or use a torch or whatever, right? They just don't know. Yeah. They don't know that they shouldn't poop 4 feet from the base of the boulder, because a lot of people getting into climbing have never even spent time outside.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So people talk about that, but they don't necessarily talk about the fact that those mentors were the people that enabled other people to enjoy climbing, right? And brought people into the sport and supported them. And now that's not happening as much anymore either, which again is affecting the demographic, right?
Yeah. Even just the idea that, you would get introduced to different disciplines of climbing sort of in an equal way and be shown something as being very normal. So it sounds like you had a similar experience to me where in my first year of climbing, I went bouldering outside, I went trad climbing outside, I went sport climbing outside, I developed new boulders, all of that stuff was introduced to me as we're rock climbers, these are the things that we do. And there was no distinction for which disciplines you participated in as much as just what was on the schedule that day or what the weather was doing really, or just an inclination, it was all part of the same thing. And I mean, man, the people that I talk to and meet now, I want so badly for them to have that same broadness with the way that they interpret the sport, because it's totally okay to pick a favorite. Like you said, you haven't really been on a rope in 25 years or whatever, and I'm the same. I definitely have my kind of favorites. I don't really do that much trad climbing anymore, and I've never been an ice climber or anything. But yeah, it's very beneficial, I think, early on to engage with all the different aspects of it. And for me, that was strictly, I just got lucky on the people that were at the scrappy little gym that I started in. One of them was just, physically a very incredible climber, and I learned so much about training and stuff from him. And another one of them was just an underground Oregon turbo local, not anybody that people will have heard of, but someone who's climbed almost everything hard in the entire state of Oregon. And just to this day, one of the most technical climbers I've ever seen. And this is somebody who I met in my first 2 months of climbing and was just showing me how to heel hook 2 months in, and that's just not an experience that a lot of people really have these days. I think it's the social nature of it has changed a lot, probably because of the privilege thing like you were talking about, and also because of the fact that there's hundreds of people in the gym now, and so the social media and self-comparison, and there's just a lot of drags on the system. And I will say this is not a solution, but I do really try with the audience that I have to to be willing to talk about concepts that are not necessarily beneficial to my business from like a marketing point of view. I feel like I've heard, I'm a big fan of Sam Harris, who's like a philosopher and a neuroscientist, and he has a really popular podcast. And he says, like, if you have a big audience and you feel like safe in having a message with that audience, you have a moral duty to say things that you think are important. And so I feel like I have a moral duty to like talk about climbing ethics and talk about like what it's okay to do at the crag. And that stuff is not selling training plans for sure, you know? And on that same note, I really became a coach because I wanted to, I know I'm throwing a lot at you at one time. I became a coach because I wanted to be the resource for my past self that my past self didn't have. And I don't want to pass any judgment on coaches who are more expensive than me necessarily, but it's important to me that my prices stay like achievable for people, because if I feel like I'm pricing out my past 25-year-old self who I really would have wanted to help with his load management, I'm losing the plot of like why I got into doing this in the first place.
I think that really at the root of it, and this doesn't solve like the attainability from a financial perspective, but I think the biggest issue that I take with the state of climbing as a whole now is that I feel like we've moved away from cultivating an environment of like openness to learning, right? And I think that's like, I feel like that's the root of the problem, is that even when you have an audience, there are these weird things that happen. And I don't know if this is just me personally, but I know that 15, 20 years ago, and maybe it's because I'm older too, right? I could offer beta, I could offer a spot, I could offer information about how to treat the area. I could make suggestions as to what boulders people should try. And people were really open to all of those things. And now it's not so much that way anymore. Like I can go out here and, you know, again, maybe it's because I'm older, but I'll offer a suggestion that maybe people should brush the holds in a really polite way, trying to be helpful, you know, and saying, hey, that hold, I know that hold gets slick. Like you should brush it every attempt. It's going to feel much better. And people look at me like I'm crazy, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know, or you offer someone a spot and they're not interested or whatever, right? And there's an interesting thing, and again, this ties back to the demographic a little bit, but I have noticed that a lot of the time I can be friendly and say hello, how's everyone doing today, whatever, if I end up at a crowded spot. And maybe 1 out of every 5 times you get, 2 out of every 5 times you get pretty good feedback. But those other, you know, 3 or 4 times, those people just kind of give you the cold shoulder or whatever. And then when you climb and they see what your ability level is, then all of a sudden you have credibility and they're willing to listen, you know? And so I think that shouldn't be as valuable either, because a lot of us are older now too, and we're not going to be strong forever, right? So we can't always prove ourselves by climbing a certain level, but that doesn't mean that the knowledge isn't there. You know?
And it shouldn't, like, you would think that it shouldn't matter. Like, I don't want it to be meritocratic. I totally know what you mean, because I've had the same exact experience of you show up to a boulder, you climb the boulder or you climb on the boulder and people see what you're about, and then you can talk about those things. I get that. But I wish it wasn't that way for sure. I think you're right that, like, being more open probably is something we should all strive for, both in our, like, climbing performance and also socially with the way that we engage with other people. I mentioned that that boulder and index Hagakure that I did a few weeks ago, and I had talked on my YouTube about how surprised I was that climbing at this boulder with 20 people, everybody was like super polite, and I had like a number of really good experiences there, even though it was just tons of bros, but like polite bros, you know. We were broing a little bit, but it was like really friendly. And a friend of mine was like, pointed out there, he was like, do you think that people were being that way because they knew who you were and you were like having an effect on the crowd by being present? And I was kind of like, yeah, you know, but if that's what was happening, like, I'm sort of okay with that, you know. Like, it makes me a little sad to think that if I wasn't there, that people would like not do that. And I don't want to be, you know, Mr. Police Man, like dictating how everybody acts at the crag or anything. But it's interesting to think that there might be maybe people who do have audiences, behaving better or making people behave better around that person, maybe that there's like some benefit there.
Leading by example is great, but would you call a kid who's only well behaved when their parents are around a good kid? Like, I don't know, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I consider myself to be like largely from a philosophical standpoint, someone who's concerned with like the way that things work out in the end, like a consequentialist. So yeah, I think it's still good behavior. Like, like it's not, I'll take it basically. It's better than somebody being like, oh, that's that guy that I've seen on Instagram, and then behaving like a tool bag. Like,
To be fair, it's like, I think it's a natural byproduct of there just being more people, right? Because something else back in the day, like, I spent a lot of time here in the early years and saw no one else, maybe one other person, like you'd have the whole place to yourself. I spent, 3 weeks or a month in the buttermilks in, I think 2000 or 2001 or something like that. And I saw 3 people, climbing the whole time. And so I think that just by nature of there being more people, you aren't forced to get along with whoever's around and like just try to befriend whoever, because it's like, oh, it's you and one other person. And if you want to spot, or you want to share pads, or you want to hang out with someone at the campfire and not be talking to yourself out in the middle of the desert at night, like you had to just, be a little more open to whoever happened to be in front of you at the time. And now people can like click up a little more. They travel in groups more, like it'll be the group of friends from the gym or whatever. And so the necessity of interacting with the other people around in a positive way isn't so impactful on their own experience, right? Like you can go out with 5 of your friends now from the gym and not talk to the other group that's also working on the boulder, if you choose not to. Whereas before it was almost mandatory, Totally. But it was one of the better parts of it too, in my opinion. It's what made it interesting. It's why I've been bouldering for all these years, is that social element. And, I also like to sit on a pad and eat snacks. I'm probably like a lazy climber, right?
Like I think everybody loves the serendipity of like coming around a corner and like finding a boulder problem they've never seen before and thinking that it looks really cool. And I agree, like in my early days, I mean, I had made so many climbing trips where I just drove somewhere in my van. I was like, oh, this destination looks cool. And I just took some time off of work, or I took my laptop with me and I just drove to that place alone. And I was ready to climb alone. But also if I came around the corner and there were people at the thing I wanted to try, it was like magical. And my social skills were not good when I started climbing. And I had to develop them over time for sure. And spending months living in the van with your dog is not the best way to develop them. But having those experiences of being like, this person's trying this thing, I want to try this thing, how can I get along with them and like find common ground and like, not just be productive on the boulder, but also just like have a decent social experience with that person. Those are very formative for me. And now I feel like it's a different kind of thing. There's a lot of resource control and a lot of like, you have a sense of ownership or a sense of like almost clocking in for like, my group gets the boulder, right now. And when another group comes, it's like, it's hard to come around to the idea that it's like everyone's to share equally who shows up. That's a huge advantage that bouldering has over sport climbing, is as the sport grows, sport climbing gets, the resource control element is almost like a requirement, because you have to spend so much more time on the route in order to learn it. Whereas with bouldering, it's like you can kind of fail and get out of the way, but take something away from it in a much more meaningful way. And like, we should use that to our advantage. Like we should share better. Honestly, it's that instinct to go into resource control mode, I think, is like probably one of the more damaging elements of the sport now that there's a lot more people involved.
Yeah, for sure. Like when coming up climbing in the gunks, like, I would be out with my brother and I, or my brother and myself and my girlfriend, or maybe like a couple friends that I was introducing to climbing or something. And you would, have you ever been to the gunks?
Mm-mm.
So like the area where most of the trad happens is called the carriage road. It's the traps area. and the boulders are kind of strewn along this old carriage road. It's like not very wide, and so it's just a straight line down the circuit pretty much. There's no branch trails or anything for the most part. And so you'd start at the beginning warming up, and by the time you got to the end, at the end of the day, you had 20 people. And you just became one group. You'd pick up a stray here, pick up a stray there. Exactly, right? And then at the end, you'd be like, okay, cool. Where are we all going to dinner? And you talk about where to go to dinner and who was going to ride with who all the way back to the parking lot. And that happened every single weekend, you know? And a few weeks ago, we were down in Moe's, and we happened to bump into a group of people, and it was actually kind of funny. Like, it was one group of people. One person said, hey, I met you in the Uintas, like, over the summer, and the other person was like, hey, I met you in Joe's, and one person was like, hey, you guided me in Waco, and I was like, oh. So I met them all differently, but they were a group of friends, and they invited us out to dinner, and I was, like, shocked. I didn't even know what to do. I was like, it really dawned on me that it had been so long since that happened that you just, like, met a group and, like, continued your experience once the climbing day was over, that it was like, it felt weird at first. You know, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny that you should say that you had poor social skills, because I was exactly the same. I was like, believe it or not, I was like pretty much nonverbal when I started climbing. Like, I didn't talk very much at all. And I found that partially because of genetics, right? Like, I started getting better at climbing fairly quickly, that I could help other people with beta and stuff. And as long as I was talking about climbing, I was fine, you know, because it was like a source of confidence, almost like knowledge. I didn't have to do normal social things like talk about the weather. There was no like water cooler talk that I had to try to decipher, you know, and like, it was just like, oh, cool, I can just talk about climbing, sick. Like, and that was my segue into learning to like speak to people. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very relatable. I mean, retrospectively, maybe living in the desert, you know, for months of the year at a time was like not the best way to develop my social skills specifically, but there were so many like really formative experiences in there, and it made me who I am. I wouldn't trade it for anything, man. It's awesome.
Have you done any of your neurodivergence testing?
I really haven't, honestly, but I have people in my family who I have strong suspicions, you know, about certain things. So
yeah, I finally went in like 2020. I was going through like a big life change, not necessarily because of COVID, like a lot of other people, but it just happened to correspond with that time. And I decided to go, and like, I took like a bunch of online tests, and they were all like, like, I'm like, yeah, I got a high score, like sick. And so there was a center in El Paso down there near Waco, and I went, and they were like, yeah, you have autism and ADHD. I was like, oh, cool, the bifecta, you know.
Did that change anything for you?
It, you know, having knowledge. So like, I don't know if anybody. We're going off on a tangent here now.
It's fine.
Like,
Tangents are welcome.
I don't know if anybody else like has had this experience, but like, I spent a good portion of my life trying really hard to be what I was seeing in front of me and other people, and I just couldn't be. And I always felt like I was screwing up, like I was incapable of doing it, you know? And so to have the confirmation that where it's like, oh, there is like an actual difference in the way that your brain functions, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you can't just become a normal person. And also, like, in interpersonal relationships, like when I was younger, I used to like rub people the wrong way a lot, even though I didn't intend to. Caused a lot of turbulence in my relationships, like my romantic ones and with friends sometimes. And it was like, oh, okay. So now all of these miscommunications, I have an understanding that we were basically like speaking a different language. Like, I was saying something and expecting them to understand, but they were hearing were like the adults in Charlie Brown, like wah, 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 wah. It made no sense to them at all, you know? And they were saying things to me, and I was like, that makes no sense. Like, that's not, They were expecting that I was thinking about things the same way that they were.
Yeah.
And I was expecting the same. And so having the understanding that there's a difference gives me the ability to clarify my communication. I can see things happening with friends or like with my wife and pause and say, wait a second, explain to me like what your brain is doing here. Like tell me what your thought process is to arrive at like this idea. And they explain it and I'm like, that is not what I'm thinking at all. And then I explain my part and it's like, oh, we're speaking different languages. Like we gotta, and that understanding is really valuable to have, I think, just even in my day-to-day life in social interactions,
Totally. I mean, I haven't really done the testing, but like I suffered in my early years from like the opposite problem. Like you said, you were almost nonverbal, and like I'd show up at the boulder and I just would not. It was like the me show. It was the Jesse show and my beta and what I'm doing. And like if I was that guy where like if somebody was trying something else, I'd be like, you're supposed to like put your foot here, or you got to like grab that hold that way or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? I could not get out of my own universe. And there's actually a word for that in philosophy and psychology. It's called naive realism. It's like just the subconscious sort of belief that other people see everything the same way as you and have the same perspective as you and the same like preconceptions as you, and they don't, obviously, right? And once I personally became aware of that concept, naive realism, it's like it informs so much of the way that I think about the world. And when you see people communicating, if I'm watching two other people communicate and they're having a problem the way that you were describing, where they're bouncing off of each other like that, you sort of start to. It got easier for me once I observed that in other people to realize that I was doing it myself and the times that I was doing it, and how like, yeah, it's complicated and you have to interact with every different person a little bit differently maybe, but that if you just make the effort and you realize that communication is not input or output, but it's like some of both, and it's making sure that you are on the same page and you are seeing the world the same way.
Did that version of Jesse exist mostly in the context of things that you were knowledgeable about or excited about, or was it just like all the time? Were you like walking around the grocery store like, this is a banana, this is a banana? Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you know where papayas come from? Or was it like, oh, I'm so over stoker about climbing that I can't help but be like this ball of energy when I'm at the boulders,
I think
because context matters too, right?
Yeah, I think it's mostly climbing. I've been a bit, but like everything in my life in my 20s and early 30s was mostly climbing. So it's hard to say that there could really be any other answer, I mean, I've been told by my parents that when I was like a little kid, I was like very precocious and like explaining things to people that I had just learned and that kind of stuff. So there probably is some of it that persists through everything. But I'll tell you this, because I don't know that I've talked about it on the show, that like for a long time I was a programmer. Just because I was a computer geek when I was a kid. I loved computers and I got really into tinkering with them and learning stuff. And so I did that for a career for a while. But there was many years where I was doing that, where I was just fooling myself that it was something that I really enjoyed. And as soon as I started mentoring other people and like working with the team, like I became a more senior person at the place that I worked and was like had people working under me. And I realized it was so much cooler to me to give somebody the information on how to do something and have them run off and do it and then come back to me with a problem, and then I'd help them with the problem and they'd go off, and I could do that with all these different people. And I was like, wow, my ability to influence what our company is doing is like 5x'd by doing that instead of actually writing the code. And then I was like, wait a second, all I actually care about is that process of like empowering other people, being that catalyst. I don't actually care about what we're doing at this company anymore. And boop, I switched to coaching.
Deep down inside, I'm a teacher in my deepest heart as well. Nice. Yeah, it's like I get people don't believe me sometimes, but I'm like, when I help someone like get to the top of a boulder or like stick a move even, I think I'm more excited than they are a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like it feels even better than if I do something myself most of the time. It is nice still to challenge myself, but like, man, like one of my best friend that I introduced to climbing back in like 2018, I mentored him, and when Emily and I got married, we got married in Yosemite. We like poached Camp 4 for our ceremony, and he came out and he he did the ceremony, and I got to watch him do Midnight Lightning, and like highlight of my climbing, career, almost like one of those things, one of those like pillar moments,
Yeah. For sure.
Super cool. Way cooler than climbing it myself, honestly. Yeah.
I mean, I still go out climbing, and I'm still so psyched on my own climbing, and I probably will be for a long time, but I now just vicariously enjoy other people's climbing exploits, like sitting at my desk, just enjoying people setting their projects like all over the world. I mean, that's my job. It's awesome.
It's not a bad position to be in when you're going to be like sitting there nursing a baby. You're going to have bottle in one hand and YouTube in the other.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, there are benefits to the modern climbing world, and some of those things can hold us back too. But it sure is cool, like how connected the climbing culture is now compared to what it was like back then. And yeah, it does come with downsides, but it's neat.
I've recently quit all my social media, so
Is that like a
it's
mental
been
health
interesting.
choice?
Yeah, it's just too much for me. I'm like a really, really deeply empathetic person, and I found myself just getting sucked into these holes of like despair, and I do not like problems that I can't solve. I don't like feeling powerless to fix something or help something, and so I had to like step away, and I feel much like noticeably better. But I also feel disconnected. Like I feel like I'm wondering, like, oh, I wonder what my friends are doing. I wonder if anyone's sending anything here or there, or whatever, or family things too, right? Like, stuff like that. So
I do. I've done similar things. So like, I forget if this was last summer. No, it was the summer before last. I took a month off of Instagram. And this is like, I have my coaching business on Instagram and everything. And at that time, I didn't have anybody helping me. So I just put a thing on there that said, like, taking a 1 month break. I'll be back. Still coaching. You can still buy stuff from me, everything. And, like, I got so many messages from people asking me, and emails from people asking me, like, why I had quit and, like, where I went. And it's almost like if you're not on there, you don't exist a little bit.
Ooh, yeah, that's exactly how I put it. I was like, that's the thing that made me scared of doing it. Is feeling like I was just going to disappear from the world and everyone was going to forget about me. And that is a red flag, right? Like if you feel like there's this thing in your phone that makes you exist as a human being in the eyes of other people, and without it, you don't exist anymore, like that's a problem, in my opinion. Like that's like a scary thing, right?
We kind of have backed ourselves into a little bit of a corner, like culturally, and climbing is just a tiny, like, subset of that culture, but it's really intense in the climbing community, the social media thing, especially Instagram specifically. I think YouTube has quite a bit of sway in the climbing culture too, but I think Instagram is the really big one. And it's like almost easy to forget that there are lots of people out there who are, like that Japanese guy I saw in Rocklands, like he probably has an Instagram, I don't know, but I didn't know who he was. It's easy to forget there are people out there who are just crushing, who are living in the desert, who are doing the first ascents, who are engaging with the sport, and they just don't have any kind of digital identity, and like that doesn't make them any less real. I think, I'm changing the way I do business a little bit this year. I know many of these topics are not what we plan on talking about, by the way, but I just find all this stuff interesting.
Whatever. Yeah.
I'm changing some of the things I do this year, and a lot of the reason I'm changing it is because I just want to get further away from trying to sell stuff on social media, because it's a drag, and I don't, beyond just for myself, I don't like the idea that someone has to be on social media in the first place, and so if I can do anything to help facilitate getting them off of it, I feel like that's like my moral duty almost to do. But I have to make money.
That's the hard part, right? Like that was the other part, like the feeling that I was going to cease to exist in the eyes of other people because I wasn't going to be present there. They weren't going to be constantly reminded that I exist and shown what I was doing in my life. So there's a disconnect there. But then also the same thing with businesses. Like I was coaching for a while, and I had a little bit of a hard time getting clients, and all of my friends were like, you have to do more content, you have to do more content, you have to do more content. And I was like, I want to coach and help people climb better and enjoy climbing more and be healthy or whatever, I don't want to spend 40% of my time creating social media content. That's not what I'm interested in doing, you know? And and it was kind of the same. Like I make wooden holds, and it's the same. Like I was like, oh man, if I'm not constantly like putting shots on Instagram of the process and listing my things on there for sale or whatever, like, will it just falter, you know? And that remains to be seen. But at the same time, if I'm feeling down in the dumps all the time and my creativity is destroyed and my energy is destroyed and I'm not sleeping well, all those things affect my personal life, but they're not good for the business side of things either. You know, like I'm way more productive now. I'm sleeping better. I'm eating better. Like it's made a huge difference, among other things, other changes as well. But that was the biggest one, I think, is just not being constantly bombarded by all of those things, you know?
Yeah. That's amazing.
I still like to stay socially aware, right? Like I'm not saying that I want to just check out and be like, hey, whatever atrocities are happening in the world, like I just, as long, you know, ignorance is bliss. I'm not saying that at all, but I get to control it a little more now. Now I can like go on the news with the intention of getting up to date on what's happening instead of, you know, something happening and then seeing like 900 people's commentary on it all throughout like the period of a week or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I like the news is like an obvious and prominent example because it's always a catastrophe. It like kind of has to always be a catastrophe by design because they're trying to sell ads. But like, you know, being a new parent is another extreme example. So like if you're a new parent, you spend time on Instagram, it picks up real fast that you have a baby in your house because you look at baby stuff and it's like, oh, you like this baby stuff because you relate to it. So here's, you know, an infinite, never-ending avalanche of baby related things. And like that's just a perfect example of like there can be 50 ways to do something and you're going to see one way on there, and then the comments are just going to be people bickering over the other 49 and how it's child abuse if you don't do it the exact way that they did it. And it's like everything goes from totally fine to total vitriol in like 2 comment threads, you know. Mm-hmm. And climbing is actually not an exception to that rule either. But probably the most insidious thing, and the thing that I've seen the most as a coach, is just the self-comparison trap. And that is the single, probably of all the advantages that we came up with, you know, in our scrappy gyms and like and dirt baggery in the early days, like just not having the thing looming over your head of like where you should be or like how hard you should be climbing, or like other, you know, this other guy was doing this thing when he was this many years into the sport, or like climbed this hard on the moon board. And man, even having come up with that stuff, even where I'm at now, 20 years into the sport, like that can fuck with my head a little bit, like seeing what other people are and just being bombarded with what other people can do. It's really frightening for people. And as a coach, I don't really think anybody's immune to it who's spending time on social media. It affects us all.
Yeah, I think honestly, I feel like I have throughout my climbing career been maybe a bit of more of a victim of comparison than someone who compares myself to others. I've always really, really personalized and internalized my climbing and my climbing achievements, you know. But other people, I've had other people play the comparison, like compare themselves to me, and then like get upset that I wasn't playing the game back, basically, you know, like climbing for me, honestly, is like more of a spiritual pursuit, you know. It's like about me moving and interacting with nature and being in places that are beautiful and spending time with friends and all of those things that come with it. Like the only reason that I've ever wanted to climb harder, honestly, like the only reason I've ever wanted to climb harder is because that just means that I can do more things that look amazing. You know, like that climbing V14 means that everything below that you can presumably do, which opens up an entire boulder field to you instead of half a boulder field or whatever, right? Like my aspiration has always been to walk up to whatever inspires me and have the the physical and technical ability to do it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, right? Like, and I don't know. I knew people that I came up climbing with that had that same approach, but I don't know so many anymore.
I think that a lot of people will tell you on paper that that's why they want to climb harder, is so they have access to more. If your highest grade is higher and you're more competent at the grades right below that, then theoretically you can go on a trip. You have access to more things. And I've heard over and over and over from people. It's always it's slightly different grades, but people will tell me I really just want to climb V8 because it seems like all the cool looking things are V8. That people will also tell me they really want to climb V11 because it seems like all the really cool looking things are V11, which is kind of funny. I feel like people sort of set the bar where they think they can get to, and I think it's very relatable to a lot of people, but I do think people, that's their stated preference, and then when they actually go to the crag or they actually go to train at the gym, it's easy to get sucked into other goals, shiny object syndrome, or they just the comparison trap gets them, and they're trying to do something that somebody else thinks is cool or something that's popular this week or whatever. And just to add my personal experience with it, I do kind of feel like this might be a hot take as a coach, but I kind of feel like my overall progression, my baseline in terms of how the grade that I can do pretty quick or the grade that I can do in a day, I kind of don't think it's going to go up that much more from where it is. Honestly, I feel like I might get a little bit better at doing V11 if I keep traveling and exposing myself to new areas that have things of that grade. Maybe I'll flash a couple more 10s, but I actually think V12, the range of difficulty that I've experienced at V12 is so broad to me. And there are 100% V12s in the world that I'm not confident that I'll ever be able to do. Shaken Not Stirred is a great example. Maybe if I spent the next 5 winters, if I just dropped everything and I spent the next 5 winters in Waco and I made it my life goal to do that boulder, I could get my crimping to that level. But short of some effort like that, it doesn't feel logistically possible. You know what I mean? It feels physically possible, maybe. But I do think I could stay here where I am and have the baby and have my life and my career and everything. And I do think I can climb V14 here. And I'm still interested in that, pushing the peak as high as I can, even if it doesn't come with an increased breadth of experience. But I think it took me 15 plus years of climbing to get to that point on the journey, if that makes sense. And I think maybe one more thing. Sorry. I feel like if people jump too far ahead and they're 5 years in and they're trying to do that, pushing the peak really, really high thing, I think they sell themselves short.
Yeah. And I think that like we were talking about earlier on about movement, right? And ethics and knee bars and all of these things and repeating things. To me, I want to do justice to the nature of the movement that the boulder is providing. And so what I look at is, if I'm capable of climbing V14, right, that means that I can probably climb V10 and V11 really well. So I get to enjoy those boulders to the fullest. They're not some scrappy battle to the top of the boulder. I can actually I can do them really, really well and climb them cleanly and nicely and take my time and appreciate them and stuff like that, right?
And do you feel like you could do it again and it was not a random fluke?
Yeah, you could do a boulder and be like, that boulder, that was so fun. I want to do it again and just do it again. And so that's what, to me, having access to that higher level of fitness has always meant, right? Because it's cool to do a V14, but personally, having had both experiences, I would rather go to a place like Waco and just climb 10 classic, amazing V10s just beautifully and perfectly and really, really getting to appreciate the movement than climbing one V14.
Hell yeah. Oh, so, a perspective of climbing on a trip, I 100% agree with you. I'm just I'm at a phase of life where I think the other thing is a little bit more practical for me right now. I'm also
for sure.
I'm kind of running low on super classic V10s to do in Washington. There's a few. There's a few around. Mostly I have to discover them now, I think. But
I have the same problem here in Joe's.
Dude, I'm sure after I've actually had that question in my outline, which I completely ignored for this entire podcast. But just like, how are you still motivated to climb there after like 25 years?
It's hard sometimes, you know. I find myself bouncing between the two extremes where I'll find a new boulder or two that I clean up and I really want to do. And then like friends visiting, which really gets me motivated, right? Like when people come to town and they're like, hey, let's go climbing. And I say, I'm going to go climbing with you. Like I'm going climbing with you, whether I want to or not. You know, sometimes I feel unmotivated and I'm like, oh, do I really want to go to like, you know, Planet of the Apes again? And I'm like, you know what? No, I do want to go because I want to spend time with my friends and give them beta and help them succeed as well. Mm-hmm. And so I bounce between doing that where I like circuit a lot of things that I've done like a million times and like doing new things. You know?
Cool.
I find myself in a position, having climbed here for so long, that like there are things that I haven't done that are within, I guess if you're using grades as the metric, they're within my ability and range still. Mm-hmm. But some that's just, I feel like impossible. Like I'll just never do them. You know, there's just something about them, you know, like I don't know. I mean, I do know that I have some restrictions within my physiology. Like I've got these big fat fingers, you know, mm-hmm. and so there's some boulder problems here that have these like little pockets and stuff, and I'm never going to get my fingers in them. So I'm going to have to like climb a bunch of monos, which doesn't sound super fun either. You know what I mean? So there's like those sorts of things left. But as far as the classics go that are accessible to me, like I don't have a ton left.
New stuff to do. Yeah. You just got to enjoy like repeating them and all the other elements of like being outside and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm still out seeking new things, you know, like you already mentioned the one kind of high thing that I did recently, which is really cool. And then I have a project here that I'm just like really, really motivated on. But again, that's kind of one of the byproducts of like, it's one of the downsides to living in a place like this too, is like I have that boulder problem. It's new. It's kind of off by itself because so many things have been developed. So when I do have friends come to town, I can drag them there and we can sit there for 2 hours and they can just watch me climb, which makes me feel terrible, you know, because it's like their weekend and I live here. And so I wind up doing a lot of these things alone or just with Emily now, you know?
Yeah. If I ever come to town and we climb together, please drag me to your project. Please. I would love
I want you to do it, you know? I love to give away projects is my favorite thing, you know?
Yeah, actually, in 2014, I spent a month in Joe's. It's still the longest I've spent there. And I ran into Anthony Trituti, who I'm sure you know, local Utah guy. And he was like, hey, man, you should really come check out this like project that I'm trying. It's in the next canyon over. And so the next day I like met him where he told me to meet him. And we took an ATV with a trailer that had like 12 pads in it, and I'm like hang on the back of the ATV, like hanging on to his chest, you know, and my wife and his partner like walked the whole thing because there was no more room on the ATV. They like walked with the dogs, and he took me out to this like crazy project that's just that way out in the middle of nowhere, and it was way too hard. I had no chance of I think I struggled to get up like the easier thing that was to the side of it. But man, such a cool experience, and it was really eye-opening to me to see that somebody else was like going so deep on the logistics of developing something that he had the ATV and the trailer, and he had the trailer for his truck that he could put the ATV and the trailer on and stuff. And I was like, wow, people go really crazy. That was valuable. I love that stuff. I love those sides of the sport, man. So cool to me to see that stuff. I would way rather do that than go to like a super popular area. And I want that so badly for other people to like get out to the fringes and like explore something new and like go to a different area you've never been to and like scrub something that is in the guidebook and nobody's looked at for 7 years or something. Like I think those are all the really cool little corners of the sport personally.
That contrast between the old school folks and the newer climbers is kind of an interesting one too. And I don't know if it's because like development is harder now because so much stuff has been done, but like I started developing new stuff right away. Like it seemed like the thing to do. It's like a creative pursuit. It's a whole adds like another layer to climbing, to walk up to something with no chalk on it and have to imagine a boulder problem there and try to figure it out, for the first time, no videos or anything, And I noticed that there's not as much like development going on, like in Kaya, there's like a bunch of projects listed right across the way here, like 45 minutes from Joe's. There's Triassic. And I was out there just kind of putzing around last winter with my wife, and I was like, there's a project right here. And I went up and like cleaned it and did it. And it probably isn't harder than like maybe V9 or 10 or something. And I'm like, it's just sitting there, like right there, like right near the road. And as I talk to people about development, or I've historically spent, like, when I lived in Salt Lake for a little while, when I did the bulk of my development here, I moved to Salt Lake specifically so that I could spend a lot of time here cleaning new things and developing, because it seemed like that's what there was to do at that time. And I used to clean like all these moderate boulders over the summer, so that when friends would start flying in to visit, or I was taking people out in the fall, you could like gift first ascents to people that would otherwise not have the opportunity to do them.
Yeah.
And people now that I talk to, I'm like, hey, I have something I cleaned. It's awesome. It's like probably like V5 or something. Like, you can do a new boulder problem. They're like, but I haven't done all of the established V5s yet. And I'm like, okay. Like there's this mentality with people where like they don't feel like they have a right or something to do a new boulder unless they've already done all of the other established stuff. I don't know. There's like some barrier there that I've run into like constantly. It's not like a one-off occurrence. It's all the time.
There probably is some feeling of like they didn't earn it, or they didn't, like, you got to be a local, or there probably is some stuff like that. I also just think I agree with you 100% that developing is like a creative process. That's what I love about it the most, is like it is when I feel the most like I'm connecting my body with the climb, is when I'm trying to understand what it is that I need to do in a very pure way. But it's so hard to do that when you have the trappings of like knowing what something is, or knowing the beta, or knowing the grade. It's just much, much harder to come at it from like a clean slate and come at it from a beginner's mind. And so developing just makes it easy, because I don't have to withhold any of that information from myself. I can still watch the sick videos of my friends climbing and stuff, and then I just go, look at this other thing that I don't know anything about, and I get to have a very pure and like super motivating experience. But I think that's intimidating for people, especially nowadays, because again, we both were lucky enough to have those experiences really early on and connect with that side of it really early on. But if all you've ever known is like there being beta for all of your projects, and there being methods, and the trails exist, and the climb is clean and all that, if that's the only thing you've ever had, it's going to be hard to, it's just a big learning curve to go from there to developing, especially if you already have a lot of climbing ability. Like, I think I was, maybe the third time or something that I was at the boulder field in the town where I started climbing, I was already like, well, could we climb it this way? Or like, could we, like not use this hold, and like doing that sort of stuff really, really early on. And I think most people just maybe don't have that sort of frame of reference that early.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, again, it goes back to cultivating that culture of learning and curiosity,
Curiosity. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Like being willing to learn.
It is just so persistently a reliable trait among high performers, is that they're like very, very curious about the rock and about how things are going to go, and not too like caught up in their expectations of what things are going to be like. I just notice it constantly. Yeah,
and again, I mean, people's time availability does play a part in it as well. Like, if you're going to go to an established classic that you haven't done, it's a known quantity, right? Like, I'm okay with going out, even when I was a weekend warrior, I was okay with going out and trying something new that maybe I would never do, because you don't know how hard it is, but a lot of people are really comfortable with that known quantity, and they're going to go try to do the thing and, green check mark or whatever.
Yeah.
Something.
I've been, I used to spend tons of time driving around and hiking around looking at boulders, especially like during COVID. I bought a truck specifically so I could like get on all the 2-track roads and check out all these cliff bands that were like a little bit harder to get to. And haven't done as much of that since I moved here, and then had this baby. But I have had a lot of nights where I feed the baby and I'm like awake at 10 p.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever. And a few months ago, I had a geologist, ex-client. That's weird. I had a former client of mine on the show, a geologist, and he was showing me when we did our pre-interview how to use the NGMDB, the geologic map database, and how to use LiDAR to like scope things, and try to like understand the large scale geologic events that like create good rock in certain places and bad rock in other places. And I might not be able to leave my house and like hike around and look at boulders, but man, I can look at the NGMDB. I've been geeking out and just putting so many pins on the map. And boy, if the opportunity comes for me to go drive around and hike around, I'm like ready to go find some good stuff, hopefully.
Oh, dude, just, give it a little bit of time. You throw a car seat in that truck and get yourself a baby backpack,
Yeah, maybe someday.
Just go hike around and discover some boulders,
What keeps you the most like motivated and switched on to keep performing? Is it first ascents or is it like climbing harder?
There's like part of me that wants to perform at close to my highest level that it has historically been, primarily, like I said, because that means that it gives me the confidence to have access to everything below that level, but nothing for me beats developing new stuff, like I like the curiosity, mystery, creative part of it. But I also like contributing. It feels like I'm contributing, It feels like I like the idea of putting the work in to like find something new, clean it, unlock the sequence, maybe fix the landing out here, to stop the erosion, put a trail in or whatever, and create an experience for like a bunch of people that come after me. That could be someone's like mega proj one day. It could be the send that makes their trip, right? And that's, I think, the thing that motivates me the most at this point is like contributing, leaving things for other people to experience and find some joy and accomplishment in, for sure.
This is a really contrived question that anybody could see coming, and you kind of implied an answer earlier, but if you could go back and give yourself advice, like, to 20 years ago, Rocco, what would you tell yourself?
Rest more.
Is that
for
it?
Sure.
Okay.
Rest more. Absolutely.
What advice do you think 10 years from now, Rocco, would give you?
Try harder.
Nice.
While you have the chance,
Yeah.
Because I lament that I can't do, like even 2 days on anymore without having to take significant rest if I'm really pushing myself, right? Like I can't. And I never feel good third day on, or sometimes with 1 day rest if I'm really pushing it. And
for sure.
I think that sometimes that gets me down and I don't like seize the opportunities. Like I live right here near Joe's, and I haven't been on my project that I'm supposedly super psyched on in a couple months. It's right there. It's 15 minutes away. All I have to do is go. And sometimes I'm like, it's so much effort. Like I'm just going to climb on the board. I'm not going to strap 4 pads to my back and hike up that hill, but I should be doing that. Like,
yeah. I feel like when that storm clears up after this conversation, I better get a message from you. It's like, hey man, I've strapped those 4 pads to my back and I walked up that hill after we talked, because I feel fired up personally.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't send you a picture of me on crutches or anything. You know what I mean? Like,
okay. That would break my heart.
Yeah. It's a big, it's a big one too. It's kind of big. That's one thing, being older out here too, and having that different perspective, is that like, the boulders used to not look so big to me, and they look bigger and bigger every year, And I'm kind of like, man, this is not, Joe's to me is not an amazing place to climb alone, right? Like it's really hard to get the coverage and like a lot of things, even if the tops are easy, on the boulders, like still, I'm kind of like, do I want to be up there? Like if something goes wrong, you never know, like you delam a shoe, or, a bat flies out of a hole into your face, or like something crumbles, and you know, could end really poorly. And I think about that stuff a lot more now. You know,
For
the
sure.
boulders here are pretty big.
I mean, it's not just like like we talked earlier, like the folly of youth. It's not just that. It is also like the consequences are more serious when you're older. Like maybe you have this too, but like when I go out and I know I'm trying something that's either high or has really aggressive movement on it or something like that, I almost every time I'm doing that, I have the thought in my head of like, what if today is the day that I get like a really serious injury? You know, it comes to mind, and I don't let that stop me, and I don't let it like scare me too much. I kind of treat it as like a rational fear, because if you're climbing tall boulders or you're doing really, really intense physical movements, like there is a risk, and you do take that risk when you step out your door to go climbing on that stuff. So I feel like it's very normal and rational. And as long as I can make a choice and still go out there and do it and try hard, I feel good about that. And there will probably be a day that I succumb to that voice in my head and I go sport climbing or something instead, but not today.
Yeah, it's like, it's not like you're in Waco where you can just go climb on roofs, you know, like close to the ground, for sure. I think the area matters a lot.
It does, yeah. Rage against the dying of the light.
I'm just about to touch 44, and I haven't had health insurance in like 20 years either. So,
Whoa,
you know, if I get hurt, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah. You're free soloing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But I'm a bigger dude too, so I've always kind of treated it that way anyway. Like, even if I have a spot, I'm like, am I just going to like crush them? You know, I just got to kind of
just
treat
another
every fall like,
layer of padding.
Yeah, pretty much, for sure. Oh man.
This is amazing. Like I kind of knew when we had our initial chat that I didn't need much of an outline coming into it, and I didn't really even look at my outline. So thank you for your casualness and also being willing to do this. It's super cool to just chat about bouldering with you for a couple hours. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
I'm psyched to climb together someday.
Yeah, we got to do that. I think we're opposite climbers. Like, from what I see from you, I'm like, I think we might be opposite.
Yeah, you know? That works out all the better.
I'm like, oh, heel hook. Ugh. Get away from me. Give me something to pull on, you know?
I had that feeling climbing with Tyler a little bit. I know you've climbed with him as well. Like, I was just like, wow, we could not have more different styles. Like, we climbed together in Squamish, and I almost kind of felt bad for him climbing in Squamish because it just did not give him any favors. But if we climbed on a board, he would just run circles around me for sure.
I'm somewhere between you and Tyler, I would say. Tyler's kind of on the extreme end. You know? I'm like, please, just put your feet on, dude.
He doesn't need to.
Come on, put him on. He doesn't need to until he tries something that's hard for him, and then he does. You know?
For sure.
But,
cool, man.
Yeah.
I really look forward to it. Someday I'll make it down to Utah, and we'll climb together. It'll be a blast.
Yeah, or maybe I'll come up your way.
You're welcome, for sure.
I have a more flexible life than you.
I'll have a baby in a carrier, but yeah, come on along.
That's all good.
Sweet. Thanks, Rocco. I really appreciate you, man.
All right. Welcome back, Rocco.
Hi.
You wanted to come back on and take another shot at one of the questions that I asked you. So welcome back.
Thanks. I think I was like completely mentally fried by the time we got to the end of the last one. Am I the first person to come back on and do a re-record?
Yeah. Nobody else has asked for a do-over. I'm sure people have wanted to, but you're the first person who's had the balls to ask.
Yeah, shows you my compulsiveness with perfection and things. You know, I'm like.
I mean, if it had been about any random question, I think I would have kind of been like, it's whatever. But because it was the question that it was, I was like, all right, I want to hear what he has to say, and I don't know what you have to say. So it was. I asked you what advice you would give yourself from 20 years ago because you've been doing this for so long. I was interested to hear your advice, and I think you just said that you would rest more. But it sounds
which is a cop-out answer. Yeah, okay. It's a total cop-out answer, right? Like, I found myself saying this more and more to like younger climbers nowadays, and I don't know why it didn't just pop into my mind. I don't know. It's like a little bit of an emotional thing for me, but I think I would direct myself to slow down and be a bit more fluid and flexible and moving between like trying to climb well and appreciating all the other aspects of life. Because I find that it's like really easy to get focused on just like the climbing hard part, and that can really take over. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's really important to be sure to like take it all in, like the presence of friends, the beauty of the places, simply like being young and all that comes with that. And I know that for me, it was hard, or it would be hard to imagine that life would ever be different. But those things are fleeting, and I would advise myself to focus on being present as much as possible, collect all the memories that you possibly can, and tuck them away somewhere safe for when you're going to need them later. I think in the end, the climbing part, it'll still matter, right? Because the accomplishments stick with you, and those are important. But I think its importance will be overshadowed by the experiences and the people and the places. And those are really the things that like matter once you don't have as much access to them anymore, or maybe no access to them anymore as people move on in life and things change. So
yeah, totally. The accomplishments matter the most, like when they're in context of all the other stuff that was going on in your life. Like I think I spent a lot of time climbing alone back in the day, actually a lot in Bishop, where I know you just were. And like, you know, now when I talk to people who were going to the areas that I was going to, or climbing the things I was climbing at that time, and I reflect on the time that I spent there alone, like I have really positive memories of it, but I don't think I could go back there and like recreate it. It's the context of what you were doing and who you were at that time is like really important. Yeah. And like I was with my dog, you know, for all of that. It was very formative, my relationship with my dog, those times in Bishop. And so like, that's what I think about when I think about those problems. And I think you're right. It's like if you try to turn it into just trying to tick something hard, it's easy to lose sight of all the other stuff that happens around it, which tends to be not more important, but it's still really important stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I not to say that I didn't appreciate the people and the places and everything. I did spend plenty of time sitting and looking at the mountains and looking at the stars and, you know, and whatnot. But I do think that I was such a driven person, and I see a lot of younger climbers nowadays where it's like really, really, you use this a lot, gamified, you know, and they're super focused on trying to climb well. And it's really easy to neglect the other stuff. And I do recall times where I think I said no a lot to things that I wish I had said yes to. Whereas, you know, people be like, hey, let's go to the hot springs in the middle of the night and like whatever, you know, we'll take some beers and go skinny dipping in the hot springs in the nighttime. And I was like, no, I got to sleep, like tomorrow's project day sort of thing, you know? And I kind of wish like I would do the boulder, right? And I would feel really good about that. But I almost don't remember doing the boulders as much anymore. Now I remember saying no to the experience that may have stood out a little bit more. So,
Yeah, I think this especially hits for me coming off of, because like before we recorded, I was at home, and then I just went to Chattanooga for a couple weeks on a climbing trip, and now I'm back from that trip, and it hits really well for me because like the way I take climbing trips has changed so much over the years. It used to be very much like I had the area really well researched. I knew exactly which lines that I thought would like suit me and how I would perform on them. And I would have like things I wanted to flash, and I'd have this list, and it was just all so like performance driven. And like going into chat, like I kind of had a list of things I wanted to look at, but I didn't have any ambitions of actually climbing them because I just didn't know what it was going to be like, you know, being there with a family. Like I'm a family man now, and it's a different experience. And I still had a really positive trip, but only because I knew going into it that it wasn't going to be, and I still got sucked into some like performance mentality stuff at the end of it, but I think in a way that was like a little more balanced than it would have been back in the day. But the biggest thing you miss from your youth isn't the rocks that you climbed. It's the biggest thing I think that I miss, and I think other people will wind up missing. It's not the rocks you climbed. It's like the feeling of being young and free and doing whatever the hell you want. And you know, that's the thing you miss. Yeah.
I went to, being in Bishop, I went like full dirtbag. I like went in the minivan, you know what I mean? Like didn't go out to eat or anything. I was like, I'm going to try to experience it as closely to like how I used to travel as possible, and like simplify it, like condense it down to its essence a little bit, just to see what it was like to feel that at this age. It was very interesting. I would probably describe it as feeling like a ghost a little bit. like haunting a house, you know what I mean? Where like you're seeing other people living your experience in your place, like kind of similarly to you did. I mean, modernized a little bit, but somewhat similar. And I was just kind of an enigma, like floating around watching people have those experiences and getting recollection of my own experiences, you know, like warming up hacky sacking in the middle of the road. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I can stand on the outside and see people doing what I used to do, you know? So that was like kind of an interesting experience. And I think a little bit differently than what you described, I spent the majority of my youth climbing with people. And people were like the central like motivator for me being involved in climbing. I loved like the social aspect of it. That was really important to me. And now I've transitioned into spending more time climbing alone, because people who are older and bouldering and have free time and are climbing at least somewhere near my level are like next to impossible to find, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think the contrast is very glaring for me between having a core group of people and then being like on the outside a little bit. So
yeah, I feel that for sure. I spend a lot of time climbing with people who are in their early 20s for that exact reason. It's just like they're easier to find than people who are my age, and the people who are my age that I feel connected with, they're kind of like scattered all over the country. So it's sort of like if you're in their neck of the woods, you're like, hey, you know, let's go bouldering.
And they're like, oh, sorry, I have soccer practice, and then you know, like
that's gonna be me soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's you. So I'll see you in 18 years.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm going to keep doing my best. You know, Chattanooga was a good proof of concept. I think if you can go on a climbing trip with a 4-month-old baby, you can do it. Like I've heard that like age 2 to 4 is like the most challenging time to go on a trip. So, but hey, for people who listen to the podcast, they can follow along and they'll get all the updates of what's the hardest age.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for giving me a chance to come back on and re-record that. I thought that was pretty important. I wish someone would have said that to me when I was 20, and I wish I would have listened if they did. So,
yeah. I appreciate it, man, and I think it was worth it. And also, I know you got a lot more stories to tell, so I'm sure you'll be no stranger to the podcast at some point down the road.
An immense number of stories. Yes.
Sweet. So. Thanks, Rocco.
All right.